247 Sports recently, within the past few days, put out a list of their fastest players in college football. They put a list together of 12 names to keep an eye on, and they ranked them 12 to 1. We'll start at the bottom. Ryan Wingo, wide receiver for the University of Texas, is number 12. They talk about how his speed will help Arch Manning adjust to the SEC, and I get it. It's big for Texas to have a guy on this list because you saw Matthew Golden run a 4.28. That was the fastest time of any player at the NFL Combine at the wide receiver position. You also lose Isaiah Bond. He was a talented guy. So Ryan Wingo could step right in there, be a big-time weapon for Arch Manning early on. Nate Frazier at number 11, the Georgia running back. He's going to have to pick up a lot of the slack. Carson Beck's gone. They're breaking in Gunnar Stockton. They're going to lean on that running game a lot. I think Nate Frazier could potentially have a really big year at Georgia. Damani Jackson, the cornerback at Alabama, sitting there at number 10. At 9, it's Roderick Pleasance from Oregon. Look, we'll skip ahead a little bit. I mean, Ryan Williams at 7 from the University of Alabama. We know how talented of a player he is. At number 4, it's actually Zachariah Branch, the Georgia transfer wide receiver. We know him from USC. Look, I've kind of given my opinion multiple times on Zachariah Branch. I think he is a very fast player, obviously. So does 247. I think that he has potential to be a game changer. However, he hasn't done much at the college level. I mean, he's shown flashes, but I got to think at this point in his career, he's a little bit overrated. He took a step back from year 1 to year 2 at USC as well. We'll see if he does better at Georgia. Look, he's in line to get a lot of targets because their receiving core is a little bit thin there. At number 3, they have Dylan Edwards from Kansas State, formerly of the Colorado Buffaloes. He was explosive last year at Kansas State, 2 years ago at Colorado. At number 2, it's Nicholas Harbor, the South Carolina wide receiver. LSU fans saw him a year ago when LSU went up there to Columbia. He is a game breaker. He caught a long ball in that game. He's done that throughout his entire career. I believe he's going to move into that true wide receiver 1 role for the Gamecocks this year. It's something that they hoped he would do since he came to South Carolina. This is his 3rd year in the program under Shane Beamer. We'll see what happens there. But at number 1 on this list, 247 Sports has LSU wide receiver Barion Brown. Look, it says that Brown hit 22.6 miles per hour last year during his kickoff return for a touchdown against Louisville. That was faster than any NFL player's recorded times during the 2023 season. For what it's worth, Brown was also slotted in 247's number 1 slot a year ago as their fastest player in college football. So he is there for the 2nd year in a row. They do mention that Barion Brown's production dropped last year at Kentucky. It did, but Kentucky's offense was really bad in 2024. I mean, in 2025, or 2023, excuse me, he had 43 catches, 539 yards, and 4 touchdowns. In 24, it dropped. 29 catches, 361 yards, 3 touchdowns. Brock Vandagriff, first off, was in and out of the lineup with injuries, and even when he was in there, he was not very good. He did not live up to the hype transferring from Georgia. Kentucky fans expected a lot out of him this year. He never lived up to it. But also, Barion Brown's played with 3 different quarterbacks in his 3 years at Kentucky. In 2022, he was with Will Levis. In 23, it was Devin Leary. And then, of course, last year with Brock Vandagriff. Sure, Will Levis was a starter with the Tennessee Titans. We'll see what his NFL future holds. But as far as Devin Leary and Brock Vandagriff, that kind of leaves a lot to be desired at the quarterback position. And he was productive nonetheless. I mean, he averages 12.5 yards per catch. But it's really him in the return game, right? In a 3-year career at Kentucky, Barion Brown, 50 returns, 1,400 yards, 5 touchdowns, averaging 29.3 yards per return. That is explosive. He set the record. We talked about it. Kickoff returns. He has 5 of them in 3 years at Kentucky. But a 29.3 yard average is impressive. That shows his explosiveness. And I mention all of that because, look, reports are coming out. LSU started their spring practice on Saturday. The first media availability was today. LSU's been tweeting out some videos over the past few days, just some highlights, even though media hasn't been there yet. Garrett Nussmeier and Barion Brown apparently already have a really good connection. In some of the highlight tapes you've seen, there's been multiple deep balls where Garrett Nussmeier has found Barion Brown behind the DBs, and Brown's coming down with the catch. That's good for 2 reasons. And it impacts both of these players. Reason number one is Barion Brown did not have a quarterback even close to the talent that a Garrett Nussmeier is, whether it was Levis, Leary, or Vandegrift. In my opinion, Nussmeier is a significantly better quarterback than all three of those guys. But on the flip side of things, and more importantly to LSU, Garrett Nussmeier's got another deep ball weapon. All season long last year, until the end of the year, we were waiting for Garrett Nussmeier to connect on deep balls. So many people said, oh, well, Garrett Nussmeier can't throw the deep ball. Guys, he's got a big enough arm to do it. Matter of fact, coming into the season, most people probably would have said, oh, well, Garrett Nussmeier's best attribute might be his deep ball. He was never able to connect on it because Chris Hilton missed most of the season because of that injury. And even when he came back, he wasn't really fully healthy until the last few games of the season. You remember Kyle Parker before he went injured. It was the UCLA game. He hit Kyle Parker down the sidelines. It was an excellent throw. Probably the most underrated throw Nussmeier made of the entire season. I'd put that in his top 5 passes he completed a year ago. He hits Kyle Parker, and you're like, okay, finally, can Kyle Parker be that deep threat for Garrett Nussmeier? It's going to open up the entire offense. The throwing lanes for Nuss across the middle aren't going to be quite as tight because defenses are going to have to respect LSU's ability to take the top off the defense. It's just going to spread everything out. Oh, Kyle Parker's going to be that guy. Kyle Parker goes down with an injury in the same game that he caught that long ball, and then you're kind of back to square one. You're still looking for that deep threat receiver. Look, Aaron Anderson certainly has speed on him, but Anderson played the majority in the slot last year. He wasn't really a deep ball guy. He was a guy that was maybe running, 15 to 20-yard routes, those crossers across the middle. I mean, that was kind of Aaron Anderson's role a year ago. It wasn't until Chris Hilton got fully healthy the last 2 games of the year. Let's look at what Garrett Nussmeier did the last few games of the year, the last 2 against Oklahoma and Baylor when Chris Hilton was fully healthy. As we know, Hilton had multiple touchdowns in those games. Garrett Nussmeier, the last 2 games of the season with a fully healthy Chris Hilton Jr. 590 yards, 6 touchdowns to just 1 interception, 70.7% completion percentage. That's in 2 games. And that was with just 1 deep threat in Chris Hilton Jr. Think about pairing Barion Brown and Chris Hilton Jr. together. Cassie just played the highlight. You saw Nussmeier connect with Barion Brown on that deep ball in practice. If that can translate to the game field, Garrett Nussmeier can sling it. I mean, he's got just as strong, if not a stronger arm than any quarterback in college football. And it was on display against Oklahoma and against Baylor when Hilton was out there. You pair Barion Brown next to him, you really got something working. But also, don't forget Kyle Parker. He is still on this team. Now, he's working his way back from injury. He'll, in all likelihood, be a little bit limited during the spring, but he's a guy that Nussmeier hit for that first deep ball against UCLA. Jelani Watkins redshirted a year ago because he was a little bit undersized. That's a guy coming into LSU who's a track guy. He's reportedly one of the faster guys on this team. Can he carve out a role as a deep threat? If he can, this entire offense opens up for Garrett Nussmeier. And some of the losses may not be as big. Like, obviously, Mason Taylor's a huge loss. But we've talked about it a number of times. Bauer Sharp comes in. I think he's going to be a solid tight end. You have Donovan Green from Texas A&M. Trey'Dez Green is a freak, whether he lines up out wide or at tight end. Either way, he's going to make an impact. You still have Aaron Anderson in the slot. You still have Xavion Thomas who can catch balls across the middle. And let's not forget about Nic Anderson at 6'5", who you didn't have anybody like that a year ago. He's 6'5", around 220 pounds. Your biggest receiver last year was probably Kyron Lacey at 6'2", 215. Maybe 6'3". You had nobody the stature of a Nic Anderson. Now, Anderson coming off of injury, but he missed the entirety of last season. He got hurt in game 1 for Oklahoma. If he can come back fully healthy, that just opens up so much, and it gives Garrett Nussmeier so many options. If you can shore up the offensive line in front of a Garrett Nussmeier, having a Chris Hilton Jr. and the newcomer Barion Brown in that offense could do wonders for a quarterback. This is one of the reasons I expect Garrett Nussmeier to have a big year. I'll go back to the numbers of the last 2 games. In 2 games, 590 yards, 6 touchdowns, just 1 interception, 70.7% completion percentage. Garrett Nussmeier was a completely different quarterback when Chris Hilton was fully healthy and he was able to hit the deep balls in this LSU offense. Now he's got multiple weapons that can hopefully do that for him here in 2025 with his second year under Joe Sloan, his second year as a starting quarterback in the SEC. That's why if he can get that connection going with Barion Brown and pick up where he left off with Chris Hilton Jr., I think Garrett Nussmeier is in for a big season in Baton Rouge.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.